I'd respectfully disagree with you on some of that. Let me tell you why. It kind of makes me angry when after years in the 50s and 60s and 70s, we had liberal justices who were making up things from the Constitution out of whole cloth. And because we continue to have liberal justices on the court, those things stayed in place. And now all of a sudden you get conservatives on the court who are saying, no, abortion's not in the Constitution. No, it's not right to discriminate against anyone because of the color of their skin. And we can't have laws that do that. And they're undoing those things. Now all of a sudden it's unfair. I would argue it's not unfair, it's just different. And you may not agree with it. And that's what's great about a democracy. You know, you can support people who will do things differently. I will tell you this. I don't know Justice Gorsuch all that well, and I don't know whether I would have appointed him or not. But I know Amy Coney Barrett really well, and I definitely would have appointed her. And I know Brett Kavanaugh really well, and I would have definitely appointed him. And I'm not saying I wouldn't have appointed Gorsuch. I just don't know him well enough to know whether I would or wouldn't have. But what's really going on is what Barack Obama said to us a number of years ago. Elections have consequences. And so we've had more Republican presidents. And by the way, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, bless her soul, decided to take it right to the end. Took it right to the end. While Donald Trump was sitting in the White House. She could have left when Barack Obama was in the White House and been assured that someone like her would be appointed to her seat. She didn't. That was her choice, but it had consequences. Justice Kennedy, on the other hand, left before he died, and he's still alive. He left while Donald Trump was president. So Brett Kavanaugh got appointed into his seat. There are political consequences for all of this. What I think is important is that I hate the attack on the validity of the court because they've said what they've been saying in the minority for 50 years, that these things are wrong. Now they come and they're in the majority, so they say, that wrong stuff, we're changing it. In the very same way that when the liberals were in charge, they didn't like certain things and they reversed them. But I think if you look at the core of what the Supreme Court has stood for, they still, despite being 6 conservatives and 3 liberals now, they still have not given up on the rule of law. So when Donald Trump brings the election stuff to them, 9-0, no. Okay? If you look at almost all the decisions that the Supreme Court makes, the thing that happens the most is 9-0. The ones we read about are the 6-3s, the 5-4s. But these men and women are trying to do the very best they can. And I think we're running down another institution of our country that we need. An independent judiciary keeps an eye on everybody else in government. That's why we give them lifetime tenure. So I don't have to worry about getting reelected. I don't have to worry about whether you or me like them or not. I can guarantee you that Ruth Bader Ginsburg could have cared less whether I agreed with her or I didn't. The same way Antonin Scalia, before he died, could have cared less whether I agreed with him or disagreed with him. That's the kind of judiciary we need. And I'm concerned that as we run down the Supreme Court because we disagree with the decision, that we're going to diminish the value of that court to our democracy. It is the one thing that distinguishes us from every other free country in the world, let alone the dictatorships, is that independent judiciary. So we can disagree on some of that stuff, but my vision to finish the answer, I would look for the very best qualified people who are consistent with my philosophy of the role of federal courts in our governmental system. And you know what I also learned from picking judges as governor? They all forget who appoint them once they get in. I say they all believe they were virginal births. Politics? Nothing. I had nothing to do with I don't even know what you're talking about. I had nothing to do with politics. Meanwhile, 10 minutes before they got sworn in, they're at my office begging to be appointed, right? Governor, whatever you need, I'll be your guy, right? Let me tell you, man, they all forget it. So, and Republicans have seen that with a number of justices that were appointed by Republican presidents. Harry Blackmun was appointed by Richard Nixon. He wrote Roe versus Wade. David Souter got appointed by George Bush 41. He was one of the most liberal justices, as it turned out, in the modern history of the court. So a lot of times you think you pick right, and you don't. And that's the beauty of the system, because once Souter got there, he didn't care what George Bush 41 thought. David Souter was going to do what David Souter thought was best. We got to preserve that.